So yeah, I wanted to talk about this topic of visualizing our visions. And obviously the vision, like in one of the last network meetings we had, is symbolized by the symbol of the eye. And the word vision even contains the act of seeing. So it seems quite obvious to me that there should be some connection between vision and visual representations. And so this is the conversation that I'd like to trigger here today with all of you. And there will be a couple of parts of this short first presentation for us to get started. We'll just go into a bit of background, introduction. Then I want to talk about the theory of why visualizing your vision might work or not work. The science here is not completely conclusive yet, but there are some interesting insights from the psychological literature. And then I actually want to talk about how to implement this process, how to really go about visualizing your vision. And then in the end, we'll talk about how to integrate the artifacts and the visual representations that you can create into your everyday life and how to make that a part of your routine. So there's this very classic cycle of growth that also here in Maniphesto we talk about a lot, which is first defining your vision, coming up with clear goals, and then turning that into actions and habits especially. And then by doing certain things over and over again, you materialize certain outcomes. And then when you have achieved that outcome, you probably have another idea for a new vision, a new goal that you want. And so this way, iteratively, you move closer towards your end vision. And what I've been wondering about for some time now is there a process that can accelerate this cycle? And is there maybe even a step that's missing? And I think that for some of us, there is a step that can help here, and that's visualization. And it's a step somewhat between vision and action. So vision, when we talk about vision here in Maniphesto, at least, we often think of writing down our goals, and it's a more a verbal process. And there is a part in the core integration training where it just asks you, what is your vision? And then you're supposed to answer with words. But in that process, I realized that a lot of times I actually think more of images, and I realized that it helps me think in images. And in the next part of this presentation, I want to discuss with you why that might be, why images might be a more useful way to think of your vision, and why it can actually inform your actions and habits more closely. And so I think there's different mechanisms that make imagery a powerful tool to use when you're moving from vision to action. And the first one is that, in a way, images force you to clarify even more than words what it is you really want. Because you can think of the vision that you write down in words a little bit like a book you read. And when you read a book, right, you can fill in a lot of gaps with your fantasy. And that's great in some ways for entertainment and for creativity, but it also creates some kind of vagueness. And when you have to put a picture to it, that's the analog of making a movie out of the book, you concretize, you really decide for one particular version of your vision. And that can be very helpful, especially when you find yourself abusing the vagueness of a verbal vision and not taking very directed, concerted action because you kind of make up excuses where you say, yeah, I wasn't really sure how I wanted it to be anyway, so it's okay that it didn't happen. And so by choosing pictures, you make yourself think very, very hard about what it is exactly that you want. And it also makes you think not just about what you want, but also what you can actually believe in. So when you choose a picture, let's say, of a certain part of your vision, let's just say you have a vision of having a house someday, right? You want to have a house. And so when you think really hard about what kind of house you want, and then you look at pictures, you will think very hard about what kind of house you believe you could actually possess at some point in your life. This is a very kind of materialistic example, but it makes the point that there will be a point where you hit your own limiting beliefs and you start realizing that maybe you don't even believe in your ability to create a house of the kind that you really want. And then you will have some conflict, which will be revealed. And that's the very good thing. And then you can decide whether you want to start believing more in your dreams, or whether you want to make it very clear to yourself that you have unrealistic dreams and you should adjust your expectations. This is the first, I think, mechanism that makes visualization powerful. The second mechanism that I want to expand here is images make your vision more vivid. And this is different for different people. For some people, for example, they really enjoy reading a book, and that's more vivid than the image, than the visualized version of a book, the movie. But having both, I think, is definitely the way to make it as rich as you can. And obviously, words have strength, and they can make really interesting worlds pop up in our minds, but images have their advantages as well. They can usually convey more information in less time, and they make the whole experience more sensual. The word often needs to be consumed very attentively, and it needs to be like taken in before it can really cause any kind of sensation. Whereas an image, you can just look at it for a moment and you can already feel a lot of different emotions. And so that makes the vision become more present and more vivid and more information laden, which can help manifest it in your being more deeply. And then when that happens, when you have a stronger idea of what exactly it is you want, I think that you actually see more opportunities as well. This is something that has been shown a lot by different scientific studies, where they prime people, and once they have an idea of what it is they want, they see more opportunities in the real world for paths that lead to where they want to go. And I think this is something that I have often experienced in my own life. The story of me being here is actually one of that kind, where I made it my vision to become good at speaking, at coaching, at motivating people. And suddenly I saw a lot of opportunities for doing that. And so when I see an opportunity to give a presentation like this, or lead a meeting, I usually jump on it, because I've made it very clear to myself that this is the path that I need to take in order to get even better at it. And then there's another mechanism that I want to highlight here, which is that visualizing actions can lead to similar results as the action itself. There's a study that shows that when you have people train their muscle in their finger, just a very simple act of training your finger strength, they obviously get a high increase in the strength of those muscles. But they had another group, a control group, or an experiment group, actually just visualize moving the finger without moving the real finger, without moving the finger in reality. And what happened was that the people who visualized had a similar increase in muscle strength as the people who actually moved their finger. And so in the same way, when you visualize the actions that you have to take, it's a little bit like rehearsing. And before I gave this presentation, I obviously rehearsed it once. I just went through it once. And when you have a vision board, it is kind of like you're rehearsing all the different aspects of your behavior that you need to take in order to get to where you want to be. And it kind of trains your mental muscles and gives you a short simulation of what it's like to go through those different difficult behaviors that you want to take and tackle. Then there's one more here, which is the reduction of stress of a novel situation. And I always give an example here, which is that I'm still a bit nervous when I go in front of a crowd, or when I go in front of a camera, and especially when it comes to making videos. That's actually a bit of a challenge for me. And so I made sure to include an image in my own vision board of me being in front of a camera. And by looking at that, this moment of having a camera at me becomes a little bit less scary, because I don't just experience it when I actually put a camera in front of me, but I also experience it every time I look at that little photo. And so when I look at my vision board, I make sure to look at these different moments where I know those are going to be scary moments for me. Those are going to be challenging moments, and I get more used to them. And then when I actually experience that moment, it becomes a little bit less novel, a little bit less stressful, therefore. And then another aspect, the last one I want to highlight here, is that having a visual representation of your actions and your goals will remind you of what it is that you have to do in order to get there. And here I actually want to open my own vision board just for a moment and show you a little bit of an excerpt from it. I don't want to show you all of it. It's a very personal document, but one thing that I have in my vision board is this guy here meditating, right? I like meditation. And so I put this dude here that's sitting in a terrace and he's sitting in a jungle, and I look at that. And every time I look at that, I notice how straight this person sits and how he's doing the actual lotus seat, which you're supposed to do when you're in meditation. And so that reminds me that I should also be sitting straight when I do my meditation. It reminds me that,
just so you know, we can certainly see that slide of visualization helps. We can't actually see your vision board.
oh, I see. Okay, I'll have
We're
to change
intending
the,
to
I see. That's good to know. I'll just change the sharing settings so that I can
okay, yeah,
include
you might be
the
just
whole-
showing a specific window instead of
Oh yeah. So now you should be able to see my vision board as well.
it's good now, yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I just zoomed out to show you a little bit of how I structured my own vision board. And here there's a particular aspect in my vision board, which is this picture with a person who's meditating. And it always reminds me, as I said, of how I want to sit when I meditate. And I often don't do it properly, but when I look at this image in the morning before doing my meditation, I definitely remember to sit properly. This is just a little example, an anecdote of how my vision board reminds me to take the right action. Now let's get back to the presentation and talk a little bit about how you can actually take this and implement it in your own life. The example I just showed was my own vision board, and here we can talk a bit about practicalities, really. One way to build your vision board is to just browse the internet, look for images, and put them together into a big Keynote or a PDF, as I just did. But there are actually many other tools. I just did a little bit of research now on how people do vision boards today. And the best way, I think, is Canva, which is a tool where you have a lot of templates and you can basically have a pre-made vision board where you just need to replace the images. There's other ways these days where you can even generate images. If you don't find an image that really corresponds to your vision, you can even use AI to generate exactly the kind of image that you envision. And then, of course, there's also a kind of process to creating a vision board. I like to divide it into different areas, and I like to use one corner for my professional and my work and my purpose, one area for my health and my body and personal practice, and then one area for my relationships, a lot like we do in Maniphesto in general with the 3 Ps: personal practice, purpose, and people. And so this could be a moment where we take some time to actually create our own vision board, but I'd like to do this at the end and now talk a little bit more about how to integrate a vision board once you have created it into your everyday life. So the first step, I think, is to actually print it out and place it prominently. And this can be digitally, it could be on your phone background, on your desktop background, or analog in a printed version next to your desk, or I have it behind my bed and next to my desk. And then I also have a process to actually include it in my routines. So every day in the morning, I do a journaling routine where I look at my tasks for the day, but I also make sure to write down a few affirmations. And that's where I include the vision board very naturally, because when I write down my affirmations, I have a quick look, just a quick glance at that vision board and think of the images that correspond to my affirmation. And then I close my eyes and actually try to not just bring up the vision, not just bring up the imagery of that vision, but also the feelings, the sensations, even the smells, even the touch. So that way you can make that vision and that visual representation of the vision really become alive and make yourself feel as if you're already at that point. And then again, it will remind you of the things that you want to be doing in order to be that person today. It will remind you of the things that you're not doing correctly right now, where it's very clear that there's a discrepancy between that person in the vision and the person you are right now. And then that will be a good motivation to just change that and close that gap. But then it's also important, I think, to combine it with some kind of releasing and letting go, because a risk of this very concrete visual representation of your vision is that you get attached to the specific outcome that's on that picture. And so you will never be happy if you want your life to be exactly like on those pictures. It will not happen exactly like that, obviously. So I like to combine this process of visualizing with a process of releasing and allowing myself to feel all the emotions that come up, but then also of letting them go and giving up control in some way, where I admit to myself that there's only so much I can do, and I cannot force the universe to give me exactly what's on those pictures, but I give up control and allow the universe to play its role and decide also in some way for me what of my own vision materializes and in what way exactly. And then the last part, I would say, of integrating this into your life is to update it. And once a year, I take some time to look at that vision and really update the parts that have changed. For example, there was a big corner in my vision board about relationships. And in that part, I used to have a lot of random people that I kind of scraped from the internet because I didn't have the right partner yet at that time. And so obviously when I found the person that I'm now happily in a relationship for the last 3 years, I had to update this. And that was a fun moment because I realized that I could just replace all those images that I had scraped out of the internet with real images from my life. And then I thought about my whole life as this kind of puzzle that comes together as I go through my vision board and start replacing the images that I had chosen from the internet with images from my real life. And there's one thing that's kind of in between. I also want to show you this as an example. There was like a retreat that I wanted to go to, and it was actually inspired by some of the people I met here in Maniphesto. And it was a retreat by Eli Buren, and he does these retreats in the US. And I checked it out on the internet and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I want to go there someday. And so in that way, I also put images that are not exactly completely random from the internet, but from things that I actually experienced or heard about and want to go to. And then I thought, yeah, this should also be in my vision board. It resonates with me, and I either want to go there someday or I want to organize something similar. And so in that way, I would recommend you to choose images that really have a personal meaning to you and resonate with you. But this is all about how to integrate it. And now I'd like to open the floor and have all of your opinions and maybe even experiences with building a vision board. Maybe we can go around and even see if some of you have used this tool before, and if yes, what kind of challenges you've faced.